Well, welcome everybody to the third installment of the December workshop or online program for the Sunshine Coast Health Center. And we've been talking about Dr. Wong's new book, The Human Quest for Meaning. In press now, probably published sometime next year, probably in the spring. Although I don't know for sure, but that's an educated guess. And Dr. Wong's book includes, he's written a preface for it. And one of the things he puts in the preface, he's pointing out about this meaning and purpose in life, that there are what he calls subjective meanings and objective meanings, okay? And so subjective meanings would be things that, I feel good about, okay? And he says both of these kinds of meanings are fundamentally important to your life. So this things that you personally feel good about, and then this objective meaning, which is actually what we find out in research. Like, what does the research tell us people do to live some sort of meaningful life, right? And to be able to incorporate that in your life. So both subjective and this objective. So subjective, what I feel, plus these general principles which we've discovered from all our research and from thousands of years of living. Okay, the subjective one. So this is, what do I personally want to pursue in my life? And this is important because so many people, of course, even clients here, 45-year-old man, married, 3 kids, owns his own business, and still trying to live his life according to his father. Things like that, right? So the subjective, it has to feel like it's coming from inside, that you personally, you're being true to yourself, right? And you want to do this. The reason the objective meaning is important is because if it was just subjective meaning, it might seem like, for example, I feel like killing my neighbor. And if it was just subjective, I don't know, maybe I could find some meaning and purpose in that. Or I need some money. Oh, there's that bank over there. Well, I'd feel really good if I had all the money in the bank, right? Go rob the bank. And that's why Dr. Wong says we need this objective part. What does the research told us that people do to live meaningful lives? So, for example, one of the principles that we've discovered is in most life is probably not a good idea to murder people, because it's going to create all sorts of headaches and be a huge barrier to allowing you to live a good life, particularly in our country where it's actually against the law and it's guaranteed you're going to get arrested and get thrown in jail. So that's probably really going to create a significant barrier to living a meaningful life. Same thing if you try to rob a bank. When you want to get money that's unearned by force, then you'll probably, in Canada it's guaranteed you're going to end up in jail. So this is probably not a good thing for you to do if you want to go on and live a meaningful life. But less dramatic principles we found. For example, Dan McAdams, a very famous psychologist, said, the chances are very good that you will live a more meaningful life if you attach your life to something greater than you are, whatever that is, right? And for religious people, it could be the church or God. For other people, it could be families, could be community, could be the environment, right? A lot of people today have a great passion for what's going on in the world with pollution and global warming and all that other stuff. But to attach one's life to something greater than oneself. Last week we mentioned Bill Gates and his work in the third world countries. That's a perfect example where Bill Gates is now attaching his life to something bigger than he has. This mission to help out people in the third world who cannot pay for their own medications. So that's one principle we've discovered from our research into psychology, is people seem to live a more meaningful life if they don't just focus on themselves, but focus on something bigger than they are, whatever that bigger thing is. We know, for example, the idea of, it'd be personally meaningful to me if I were a multi-millionaire. Oh man, I'd feel great and I could do all sorts of stuff. Well, interestingly enough, we've done a ton of research on money. And in certain circumstances, having money is useful. But it's usually to bring people up from a really incredible poverty line into a place where now they can afford food and shelter and stuff. It's interesting that we discover that if you're like a middle class person and you get a lot more money, apparently it doesn't make you that much happier. And in fact, in many cases, it makes them much more miserable. As weird as that may sound to you, that's actually what the research is telling us. And we know from some of our clients here, this apparently is quite true. So the research can tell us these things. Aristotle, the great Aristotle, said if you wanted a meaningful life, you had to live virtuously. Okay, so you have to live according to ethical values, right? And so maybe this is a key to living this meaningful life. And in fact, of course, we've done research on this, and we found that yes, indeed, that's true. Right? And so all of these objective ways of finding meaning have to be added into the subjective, and maybe to keep a bit of control on the subjective, but it seems that according to the research, we need both kinds of things. So not only being true to myself and what I want, but also recognition that, well, maybe these ideas that I should attach my life to something bigger than I am, or maybe helping out my neighbor will make me feel I'm living a more meaningful life. These kinds of things are necessary. Anyway, that's this week's little installment, and we'll be back next week with another little topic on Dr. Wong's new book.